Hey guys, my name is Nicholas. I'm an animator on Crowfall, and in this video I'm going to be chatting a little bit about what it's like animating one of the creatures in our game. It's a large undead griffin. He's kind of half alive, half dead still. He's mostly eaten by the hunger at this point, I think. I think this is actually stage 3 of his transformation process. But let's get started here. Okay, so we're going to pick up here right about halfway through my blocking stages on the Griffin here. What I'm trying to get him to do is do a big monstrous roar that could either be used as an attack or it could just be used as a cool flourishy piece. I'm really trying to get a feel for the rig. I'm trying to figure out how it functions because actually learning how to drive the rig is very, very important when it comes to producing solid work. Depending on what it is you're doing, you may not even be the only person working on the same character. So one of the things I have to keep in mind while I'm working on this guy is making sure that all of my keyframes are relatively clean and easy to figure out. One of the harder things to learn in animation is learning how to use the rig correctly to obtain your desired poses as simply and elegantly, easily as possible. So if someone did have to come behind you and see, touch your work or work on it at all, that they would be able to hopefully rework it, or just tweak it just a little bit in just the right ways to get the desired results. One of the other reasons this is such a good method and thing I try to keep in mind when animating is because when it comes to video games, the game is never really concrete, set in stone until it's shipped. I mean, stuff's getting changed to the last minute, so it's very important and really just beneficial and time saving to have my animations as clean as possible. So if I need to make the roar a lot longer, for instance, if they want them to be more powerful and much larger, I might go in and take the animation and scale the whole thing out, and then work on certain parts to make him feel really large and slow, and then maybe belt out this really powerful blast. And by keeping my animations clean and well put together, I can iterate on it in that manner that much quicker. It's a trick, but it's something that has helped me a lot. And so what we're doing here is we're blocking, and I'm trying to get a feel for the character's poses, and you see me moving elbows and shoulders. I'm doing some detail work here, which is probably actually a little bit preemptive, believe it or not. But sometimes it helps to just focus on little bits and pieces to help the character just kind of feel right. One of the big focuses here was on the character's neck and head, as he whips his head left and right before the roar, and then of course after the roar, during the roar, as he drags his head across the front of him. So it's it's been kind of tough trying to figure out how his body works. One of the things that something I learned shortly after working on this piece is just how much impact the work I'm doing here is putting on the wings. I was thinking that maybe I could block out the body portion separate from the wings, and that worked in the sense that I got the body working, which is where the power for the wings is going to come from, as it's moving around to some degree. But one of the things I ended up having to go back and doing in the front, at the end, was cleaning up the poses of the body so that the wings don't get as much noise from animation it's picking up from the body as it twists and throws itself around. So what we're looking at here is we've actually just skipped ahead a little bit, and you've noticed I've actually started working on the wings. And one of the cool little things I was doing here, or at least something I think was kind of neat, was I would animate both wings very, very, very loosely, just to get them to kind of walk through the steps that I wanted them to walk through as the body does its parts. But then you'll notice what's coming up is I'll stop working on one wing and only focus on the other. And I'm doing that because it allows me to compare and contrast the two wings side by side. And then as I work one wing to a certain point, and I get to a point where if I really like it, then I'll go ahead and mirror that animation onto the other wing, so that I can then basically have an update. Or sometimes I'll just leave that wing alone that I've been working on for a little bit, and I'll go back to the other wing, and I'll start working that in a different way if I just to try to get a different look and feel to see what kinds of things I might be able to pull off. it's convenient in this case because the mirror tool works so well. But it really does make things go so much faster. I cannot. Speaking of tools, actually, I cannot announce how useful they are. It's actually kind of funny to me because for a long time I just didn't have tools available to me, or I didn't know where to look for them, and so a lot of my stuff actually was suffering in ways that, and I was struggling against and fighting against the tool and software in different ways that I didn't even realize I was fighting against them until I got some tools that helped me out. Like that mirror tool saved my butt. Trying to match both wings just by eyeballing it is so difficult. So what I'm doing here is I am tracking the position of the white controller there. You see I've got it selected, the hand of the wings, so to speak, as I like to refer to it. I'm tracking the position of that, paying attention to the arc it's following. That's what the red line represents. The white dots on the line are the different keyframes. So I can see where my big keyframes are, and then I can see each individual keyframe as it travels along. You notice that in some areas it's really tight, and in other areas it's really wide and then spread out, the dots that is. And what's important here is that I make sure that that particular controller follows a really nice, clean path. The human eye needs to be able to track what the wings are doing. Otherwise, it's going to come out like a cluttered mess. So it's really important that I pay attention to these arcs and get them to look super nice. It's a bit more of the tedious part of animation, and unfortunately, it ends up kind of cluttering the timeline there with a bunch of mess. But in this particular case, those wings are really big, and it's really important that I get them following a nice arc and doing their thing, being well behaved, so to speak, earlier rather than later. I've already run into issues on this particular piece because the body had a bit much noise on it, so which was causing the wings to be thrown around or rotated around or repositioned in such a way as to make it difficult to keep this particular arc that I'm working on now very clean. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going through and I'm cleaning it up. You see what I'm doing is I'm smoothing that arc out, and what it'll do over time, if you get it right, will be much cleaner, prettier thing to look at, much easier for the eye to follow, and if it's done correctly, you almost don't even realize that you're tracking it. It sort of just becomes a subconscious awareness, and so when the whole body and the wings, the tail, and the body all kind of work together in unison like that, it works out really well. The good animation is oftentimes overlooked, where bad animation stands out really strongly. So you see what I'm doing here is I am actually adding a little bit more detail into the wings. I'm paying attention to these bone pieces here. They look like big sharp blades, and so what I want to do is make them feel dangerous and weaponized, and they're going to really kind of work kind of like his fingers. That's why I referred to that other chunk as his hand before. And so as I work them through here, what I'm paying attention to is how they flow and bend along with the flow of the wings as a whole. So I want them to collapse and spread out at the right times, particularly when he roars. I want them to spread out really wide and then rattle, kind of like a bit of a rattlesnake type function. Even though that doesn't make sense because he's not part snake, it looks cool. So you'll notice here that I'm working on. I've gone back and I've started working on the base of the wings now. What I'm trying to do is figure out, as a large piece, as a whole, how does that particular wing, ultimately will be mirrored to the other side, how does the wing move as he's moving his body around? And what I'm really focusing on actually are probably more near the tips of his wings, the end of it, but I have to use the base to actually control it. What's really important here is that the wings as a whole have a nice arc and flow to them as they move around. If they're getting thrown all over the place, if there's too much visual noise as they move around, it just comes across looking really messy. You can't really read what's going on, and it's certainly not going to feel lifelike at that point. It's just going to feel really bad and amateur. So what I was trying to do is clean up the general posing and arcs and flow that the wings go through as a whole. Then the next stage is what I do is it looks like I'm starting to go ahead and try to put a little bit more detail into the hand portions of those wings, which is really where I'm getting most of the mass and the shape of the wings. Ooh, this is a good part here. You'll notice that what I'm showing there is some of the feather motion in contrast to the bone structure underneath it. What I really wanted was for that bone structure to look dangerous and weighted, kind of like it's, strong like blades. And then the feathers were going to be very flowy and string-like. And together, those two systems, layered over each other, would really create this kind of cool sense of layered element, um, which I thought was pretty cool actually, because it makes the creature feel overall more interesting and unique.